I welcome you to the 52 Book Project. In this review, I'd like to talk about an audiobook I recently listened to. It was called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and it was written by Rebecca Skloot. It's This is like a genre I really enjoy, narrative nonfiction. This is the story of a black woman, Henrietta Lacks, who died of cervical cancer. And before she died, her cells were used for medical research. And eventually, they realized that these cells have some special properties that make them conducive for scientific research. And eventually, these cells were used to discover several important cures for diseases, and but in the process, I think the medical fraternity, it was the John Hopkins University, failed to regard the privacy and concerns of the Lacks family, um, especially Henrietta Lacks' husband and her children. And in this book, you basically get to understand how the medical fraternity treats samples of human tissue or um, and so there's basically no concept of there's no strong concept of ownership around things you give to a medical institution, and they can use it the way they please. So I mean, in this book, there are two parallel narratives. One is about the story of this amazing growth of these HeLa cells, which stands for Henrietta Lacks, just a short form of that, and how it became one of the most popular sort of basic ingredient or object for research. But then parallelly, you also look at the Lacks family and how they went through so much poverty, and they grew up with a lot of challenges, and they got no benefit from the growth of these HeLa cells, which belong to the mother of the family. So I think it really shows you a couple of things. Some lessons I learned from this book is that it's very important for medical institutions to be transparent about their procedures, especially how they conduct tests for important medications, and due credit needs to be given where it needs to be given. Very often, institutions commercialize inventions, and there are several researchers, but also families involved in, these research projects. So I think the benefit needs to trickle down throughout that network. Um, I think there's also the other side where it's important for humans to also understand how they can use, how it's important to contribute to scientific research to push forward, medical research, and that will only lead to better cures for humanity. And but I think it needs to be voluntary, and there needs to be a right to check out if that is what the individual wants. Finally, I think it's important to consider scientific subjects, especially studies done on humans, as they're very sensitive sort of studies, and I think it's important for researchers to also tell us the human side of their quantitative studies. The qualitative story is as important sometimes as the quantitative story. I think the author, Skloot, and the audiobook narrator do a wonderful job just giving you a picture of the Lacks family, especially Deborah or Deborah Lacks, who is the daughter of Henrietta Lacks, and her the effect that um, the popularity of the HeLa cells had on her life, and just some of the way the doctors treated her over time was just very unfair, and it was really sad and heartening to see how she had to deal with the medical system. So there should have been more communication in that front for sure. But it's a fun read if you're interested in you know medical research, if you're interested in the story of rights from a medical perspective. This is definitely a book you would enjoy reading.